dive into poetry session, and now it's the story session, and so many things we are going to discuss with you about. So first, big round of applause for three eminent authors. We heard three days, लेकिन मैं कहूँगी three देवियाँ, है ना? Such three wonderful women authors we have it, and I'm sure that it is going to be a very, very captivating, interesting, exciting session. My dear children and dear audience, stories are the timeless vessels of wisdom, carrying the echoes of past, possibilities of the present, and dreams of the future. In the pages of your book, we find refuge from the chaos of the world. Isn't it so? When you read stories, when you read anecdotes, when you read any narrative, you really forget everybody, anything. Isn't it so? So I'm just moving on, and I would like to really connect and have this conversation with all our three great eminent authors. And so my first question will be from Sunita Pant Bansal ma'am, and her latest bestsellers, as Ritu just told, Krishna the Management Guru and Everyday Gita have garnered acclaim from readers worldwide. So it is my privilege to discuss with Sunita ji the finer aspects of her creative pursuits. And the first and the foremost important question, because she writes so much on mythology, and I'm sure children you will also be interested. So ma'am, what inspired you to include Hindu scriptures into your narratives, making them relevant and captivating for today's audience?
Thank you Sopna. She's sitting right here. And thank you ITL School and HT Pays and Manisha, of course. Let me first say one thing. My younger daughter, her first story when she was 7 years old was published by HT Pays. So I have this very kind of fondness for this particular, this event also. So to answer your question, mythology. You see, I started writing at a very young age in class 2, and the inspiration for my writing, I won't say there was any inspiration, but it was something probably genetic, frankly speaking. Mythology is genetically, kind of wired into me. Why? Because when I was very young, I was not even in school. My grandmother used to tell me stories, and they were all mythological. Eventually I realized she told me only mythological stories. At that point of time, of course, I didn't know, there were punishments also, but whatever, it was generally from scriptures. So that's how, I grew up, surrounded by these characters who were very real to me, and I grew up with them. So it was very natural for me to continue talking about them, forever. So for the last 3-4 decades now. So that is how it was. So, there was no inspiration, it was just genetic.
But related to this only, ma'am, I would like to know that how do you make this ancient philosophy and everything accessible and engaging for different age groups? That is there.
Oh, that again is simple. You see, when my grandmother told me stories, she never said Bhagwan, she would say Krishna and Ram and Hanuman, things like that. So it never occurred to me, I never grew up with them as gods. So for me, they were like regular guys, your friends, grew up with. So obviously when you are, you consider them at the same level, you talk like, yourself. So when I write children, I talk to them. And as I was writing, my guinea pigs were my 2 daughters, So again, it was very convenient. You see, these things are very practical. So they were convenient. If I would write something and I would kind of say it out in front of my daughter, she would like it, or she would smile, or she would tell me up front that, this is not making sense. So they were the ones who taught me, frankly. So I've been speaking, writing in the language of my readers. So the examples and everything, they come from them, from life. I don't, speak or write in complicated language which even I have to probably figure out, try to find meanings from a dictionary or whatever. I just speak my heart out in the simplest possible words for my readers who I know will understand that language. That's the way.
Right, absolutely, children. Like, if you start writing, it is very important that how do you connect with your readers. The language should be super easy and flowing so that you are not juggling with the dictionaries or anything. You are comprehending, you are understanding, and you are enjoying. A very good take from you, ma'am. Now I'm moving to Harshali Singh, ma'am. And I know, I just wondering when I was reading all her profile, she is a member judge in the district court. She's a painter, and then she's writing from Haveli to Anarkali to so many wonderful books. So big round of applause, Harshali, ma'am. And my first question just goes based on this only, that how does your work as a judge and your involvement in social cause shape the way you tell stories and advocate for certain issues through your life literature?
Thank you for that question and good afternoon everybody. I hope you all are enjoying yourselves thus far. Yes? Okay, now my question before I answer the question that has been given to me. How many of you read? Oh, that's quite wonderful. And how many of you write? That's equally wonderful. So I'm before all of you who are readers and writers and authors in your own right, and you are also studying, you are also teaching, you are also you're also involved in other professions. And as we were hearing a little while back, that if you love something, you will find time for it. It is all about priority. If I know that I like to play football, if I know I like to play cricket or a video game, I will make time for it. Similarly for me, that my profession is that I work as a judge, I am a judicial officer, but I'm not able to get away from my life, and so I bring it out in my writing. The reason being that you're constantly surrounded by angst all the time. People come to you in the court of law when they have actually exhausted every other way or form of redressal. So they'll come to you hoping that you will find some way of addressing their grievance, addressing their problems. And when you are surrounded by this at all times, writing becomes cathartic. Writing becomes a need and a way to question, because change comes through questioning. Change comes through exploring what you are not able to understand, and why is this happening in our society. And hence my writing comes from a very real place, as Sunita was also saying, that writing which people are able to relate to, I feel personally for me also comes from a very real place. So when I'm writing about issues that women face on an everyday basis, about domestic violence, about marital rape, about feeling of abandonment, about feeling of that they're not happy in the place they are, though there's nothing really wrong in their lives. These are all things that I see all around me at all, most of the day, for most of the day. And so when I sit down to write, it is an exploration into why life is like that. So, but I'm writing about these issues because I'm at my age and experience. When you will write about what you are, everybody has that existential crisis that all of you have. I'm sure each one of us sitting here is thinking about something that is nagging them in the back of their head, and that is your story, and that is your poetry. So I think my stories and my topics, themes come from what I see around me, and to understand how I would as a person, grow with that, evolve when I write that. Another thing that I took away from the last session, because usually, we're on this side. So when we're on that side, you come away with so many things that you have to see where you are after you have written a story, a poetry, a poem, etc. And that really spoke to me, that at the end of my book, when I have finished that manuscript, I'm a changed person, I'm a changed human being. And I think that really spoke to me, and I think my writing is very similar to that. I related to that a lot. Because with each book, each story, each poem, you are changing, you are evolving, and in the best way possible.
Well said, ma'am. Because
Can I add something to it?
yeah, sure.
Shali is right in saying this, but one thing I'd like to say, that we don't write to evolve, we write for the sake of writing to express ourselves, We feel about a certain thing and we want to talk about it, hence we kind of vent it out on a piece of paper or laptop these days, or even mobiles. So, but we realize at the end of it that we have changed, as she rightly said, we change with everything that we write. Every book that I have written has changed me, Because when we are writing, we are ruminating, we are thinking, we are analyzing, we are doing so much activity which normally sitting, or watching TV is something we may not do. But when we're writing, we do so much activity, mental activity, it results in phenomenal amount of evolution. So that's what it is.
It's a very good take to each one of us when in this era of technology, we are all glued to either television or laptops or anything. Children, first of all, whatever you love, you will find out time for that. Isn't it so? However, the coaching culture is there, or JEE examination is there, or NEET examination preparation is there. But if you love something strongly, you will find time for that. Isn't it so? And what both the eminent authors said, that whenever you write, you are refreshed. I mean, you have went up, that is there. You're relieved, you are evolving as a person also, isn't it so? So it's not like it's just a mechanical job. What they said, I really like to repeat that. Watching television is just a mechanical process. But when you are involved in any creative pursuits, you are evolving as a human being. It is improving, it is transforming you as an individual. So please remain glued in your and busy and engrossed in your creative pursuits. That is very, very important. One more question I would like to ask Himanshi ma'am, that winning the Right India Season 2 and being selected in the top 10 by Amitabh Ghosh are significant achievements. How have these remarkable achievements and experiences impacted your writing journey? And please do share your thoughts on your most awaited book, Anarkali.
Thank you so much. Yes, Right India was, and what can I say, it was a platform that was given to me when I was just starting out. So I was always writing, as I'm sure all of you are, whether journaling or writing in your small diary that you are not sure, you want to show it to other people, etc. But I started taking myself very seriously on my writing, seriously in the sense that I thought, okay, this is a story, now I can share it with the world, I can bring the baby into the world and allow it to be looked at. And that was in 2014-15 when I realized that this is a story that I want to talk about or write about. And once I had written that, you look around you, you look at your peers, as you do in your classrooms, as you do with your colleagues, that where am I, where is my space, where do I fit in? And at that point of time, Right India happened. Now if you're not aware, Right India is a platform that gives all writers, it's like a crowdsource competition. So a prompt is given and you have to put in your stories, and your stories are then judged by eminent writers who are prolific in the craft of writing. So when I won Right India Season 2, I won it on the prompt of Chitra Devakunni. Have you all, any of you heard of Chitra Devakunni? Palace of Illusions? Yes. So, yes. So I won on her prompt, and it was a dream come true. I was on cloud 9, and she handed me the prize. And it was as if, someone tells you that, okay, you're on the right path, don't worry. And that was probably the catapult I needed to actually take off after that. And there was no looking back. And I thank Vinita Nangia, who's the director of Times of India, who organized the whole thing. She was the starting point, so to say, or the initiator of that. Who kind of mentored me after that. And then the third season happened when my story was picked up in the first 10 by Amitabh Ghosh. Now these are all authors who we look up to. When we read their books, we think, my God, I would die to write like that. And when they say, no, you're doing good work, and we choose you out of thousands of stories that come to them, it feels that my path is right, and I just need to work hard, hone my craft, be true to myself, be true to my voice. And that was what I needed. And so, thankfully, things happened by the grace of God, by kind friends, who kind of came together and supported me. And after that, now I look forward to my book coming out called Anarkali, as you were asking. Anarkali is the new book that's coming, and I'm very excited because it took me many, many years to research on this book, to find out what I wanted to write about. Normally, do you all know about Anarkali? Have you heard the name Anarkali? Yes. Salim, Akbar, yes. So I wrote about Anarkali from the point of her as only the woman. It's written in first person, which is slightly tough to do, I realized. So I wrote that book with only the focus that it is about this woman, that I refuse to accept that she could only be this, one-dimensional woman who was only known for her love affair. I refuse to accept it because she went into the harem of King Akbar when she was very young. So, and there's so much hierarchy that happens in the harem. So how did this girl survive having no, there was nobody backing her. There was no godfather, godmother, as colloquially we say, and yet she survived and became the most beautiful, most cherished courtesan for King Akbar, and also had. They say that she also had an affair with the son Salim or Jahangir, as you might know in the history books. That was one point which always kind of nagged me. It was a thorn in my head that I refused to believe that a woman who was this strong could only be known for her love affair. That could not be true. And the second thing was there's nothing in history about her. There is no mention of her in Akbarnama, which is the chronicles of King Akbar's time, or in Jahangir, in the chronicles of Jahangir's time. There was completely, it was as if someone had erased her from history, that they don't want her to be aware of the lady who was much loved by these two very powerful and very, very socially, loved kings. So that was my reason to write this book, and I hope you all, I look forward to your reviews, and I hope you'll pick it up. The book should be released by the end of the year or beginning of next year. And so yeah, that has been the journey so far. It has been very, very adventurous with a lot of twists and turns.
That's really a good and key takeaway, that we can also pick up some characters and get deep into that, what is there, and that's really, really very interesting to know about all these things from Himanshi ma'am. So now I'm moving to Prerna Jain ma'am, and she's a columnist, and children, when I just talked to her on a just single phone call, she sent me all her books, and kuch aam, kuch khas. I started reading also, and it reminded me of my childhood days when we used to read stories of Premchand, right? Godan, Kafan, those lottery, those short stories. And I can find those shades in those short stories also. Just 200 pages. But it will convey you so much, I believe. I mean, you trust me. I found this those stories very, very interesting, ma'am. And then you presented me that book of all the words. You are such a talented photographer also. Children, we talk about only studies, too much work. But you see, these three wonderful ladies and eminent authors are not only dwelling in only writing, but they're doing so many pursuits. So, ma'am, and in that photograph, I found one peahen and the chicks. You weave the story around that. That was so interesting, so interesting. So, let me just ask you one thing. Your collection of short stories, which I started reading also, stories, and that's the translation. Stories usual yet unusual, covers a range of women's issues that I realized that. So what inspired you to explore these themes, and how do you believe storytelling can contribute to discussions on such topics? What is the contribution? I mean, how can this storytelling can contribute to such issues that is there? That is what.
So these stories are not actually, I would not even call them stories. They are all the happening around me. And these are the stories told to me by my mother, grandmother, the neighborhood auntie, or the domestic help in my mother's house. And a few of them even by my grandmother's mother. I was very lucky to interact with all of them. So how did that impact me, or how it can impact? Because through my stories, while writing them, I realized that when we see a story through one character, we don't realize that it has an impact on all the other people around you. All the characters make it. Like in a composition, there is a main subject, and then there are the other supporting subjects. Same happens in stories. So that is how gradually I start with a little bit of artistic liberty. I put that on paper, and then most of them are biographical. Some are even autobiographical, and let me tell you. That's why they sound so real. There is definitely an amount of truth, maybe 10% in some stories or 80% in the others. But that is how I think. And thank you so much for comparing my stories or even giving a hint of it. Such great writing.
So thank you so much, Brenda. Yeah. So I'll ask one more question related to this only. You are also columnist and you work there also for Hindustan Times and you work technology also, SEO or artificial intelligence, and you see that diverse field so many. Then how does your experience in journalism influence your creative writing? Are these specific challenges or advantages to writing fiction versus journalistic pieces? Can you just throw light on this?
See, my essays in Hindustan Times are mostly my work as a photographer, a wildlife photographer. And I have seen while clicking pictures for more than a decade in and around bird sanctuaries and even in Delhi from my balcony, let me tell you. I have clicked about 45 species of birds from my balcony in South Delhi. Believe me, like people talk about the pollution in Delhi and everything, they don't talk about the number of birds we have here. So, and how it happened was that there was a small jungle, vacant plot. There were about 60, 70 trees there, and I could see birds coming and nesting and all that. And later on, there was a concrete jungle instead of the real trees, and that hurt me a lot. So this is how I started writing for Hindustan Times, and then I wrote about my journey as a gardener, how my garden is self-sufficient. I create my own compost, and then this is how it. And the last piece, one of the most this is one piece I love that I wrote for Hindustan Times, that was about the monkeys of Tughlakabad. There used to be a lot of monkeys, there still are a lot of monkeys there. And all of a sudden, I've been visiting them for more than a decade, and taking like really amazing. Like my photographs have been published in newspapers in London and other places as well. And I suddenly realized that there is a metro station coming up there, and the places where they used to hang out, that is not monkey friendly anymore. So that made me write a piece on the swings of Tughlakabad, the monkeys, how they enjoy themselves, and how we can maybe create a place for other animals which we find hurting. And then there was one about the dogs. Of late we are hearing a lot of stories about stray dogs biting and attacking people. I wondered, dogs are some animals which we find everywhere. Even in our temples, there is no boundary for them. They are there, and how come all of a sudden they've started attacking people? So then I realized, I went back to a story of my childhood, that in the villages, whenever they ate food, the first roti was given to the cow, and a bite was left for the dogs. That was the stray dogs. And that is how they were fed. So they were satisfied. And now, because of these urbanization, all those traditional things are going away, and that is what is hurting. So that is how I started on. That is how I started writing in newspapers.
It's really interesting to know that your personal experiences how are reflected in your writing, and as I'm saying, there used to be a custom and still custom in so many Indian households. Just one or two rotis will be prepared for cow or dogs. That's right, really, your take on that. So once again, I'm coming to our veteran Miss Sunita Pant-Bansal ma'am. And my question is this: I know that your recent bestsellers Krishna, The Management Guru, and Everyday Gita have been very well received. And ma'am, you have also written Yashodhara and something on Buddha also. So can you just share a key idea or lesson from these books that you think readers can easily connect with?
First of all, let me add to what Prerna said, that I started writing as a journalist with Times of India. Actually, Hindustan Times columnist, eventually.
Mama also, and
Many.
I think but it's not a single Forum ma'am has left. She has written everywhere, all over.
So at that time I was a columnist with the Sun Times and I used to write on nutrition, a column on nutrition because I had trained as a dietitian. Now coming back to writing, and as she rightly pointed out, if you are observant and if you have a creative, if you're sensitive, the creativity comes out. When you observe it, you start observing things that other people don't observe. You need to have a little calm and you observe, you analyze, and writing comes. So any person who's a good observer actually can write. The rest, editing and all that is something on the side. But writing is from observation. That's why the books that you mentioned, Everyday Gita and Krishna's Management, they're selling very well. And those books are, Krishna's Management Guru was essentially about, you see, I have not studied management, but when the publisher asked me to write this book for them, I had to actually read up, and then I realized that management reading was quite boring. So what I did, I just noted down a few terms that management guys use because I had to make my book friendly, it should kind of resonate with the people who are going to be buying it. So of course it did. That's why it's been bought. But the idea behind the book was that I should dig out stories from Krishna's life, anecdotes from his life, and show how Krishna, used to solve problems, crises. And that which was easy because it's all mythology. So I can give you a very simple, very short example from one of the chapters. This is a very popular story about Govardhan Parvat. I'm sure everyone is aware of Govardhan Parvat. And that typical image of Krishna lifting that mountain in one finger. Now that is a familiar image. Now what I do in my writing is I go behind the familiar image. I dig deeper into the origin of that image. So in that book what I did was I spoke about that incident when Krishna is an adolescent, like your age group. And this Govardhan, not that time it was not a Govardhan Puja, it was a yajna that his village was doing. And they were collecting, it was like a festive environment, and they were collecting ghee and the stuff that you put in the yajna kund. All that was happening. So he asked his dad, Krishna asked his father, why is this happening? What is this? What are we celebrating? Are we celebrating anything at all? I mean, there's a lot of activity. So father explained that there's this yajna, we have to do this to propitiate Indra, and because of Indra we get rains. Now Krishna being your age and your kind of mindset, I had this question that how is this impossible? Because he knew his science, he knew his water cycle, he knew all that. So he explained to his father that how can Indra be giving us rain? It's actually the clouds that give us rain, sensible. But of course his father said, you're too young to talk like this. This is something which happens. And so we had to do it. Now again, Krishna was a very curious kid and of course very persistent also. So he went around talking to everybody in the village that why are you doing this? Don't you know that it's the clouds that give us rain, not Indra? So basically he convinced the whole lot of them not to do that yajna and to use the stuff that they were using in that yajna, the ghee and whatever the food, and use it to give to the poor people. And the people agreed. They realized that this is a very practical thought and this is very sensible, so they agreed. Now Indra up there was observing this. He didn't like it very much. Obviously because there's this entire for years and years, he was being propitiated and suddenly there was this full stop. He didn't like it. So what he did was he created rain. He got together with Varun and all the other gods, the little gods up, and they flooded the place. So the people got worried and they said that now this is what happens. When we listen to a kid, this is exactly what happens. So what Krishna at that point of time did, and this is one of the very rare instances where he actually shows his, being a god. Right through his life, Krishna he doesn't show that he has powers. This is one of the very few times he actually does that because he's pushed to a corner. So what he does, he picks up Govardhan and he holds it in his hand, one of his fingers, and he tells people that you come under it and I'll hold it till this guy, he loses his steam. And that is exactly what happened for 7 days. That's what the books say. He held it up till Indra was tired of flooding the place. And he gave up and that's when he put it down. So that Govardhan Puja happens because of multiple reasons, but this is what I interpreted and this is what through the book that, you have to learn to be curious. You should ask questions. You should learn to ask questions. And that's what even Buddha said. He used to say that you listen to me, but understand what I'm saying, ask me questions and see if it, kind of sinks in your head. If you think you can relate to it, then you follow. So that is one major lesson. Same thing with Everyday Gita also. The reason for its popularity is because I'm speaking the language of young adults. Like when I talk about being balanced, in your thought, I give examples from things like, if you're going shopping, for instance, you want to buy a pair of blue shoes. You go to the market, you don't get the blue that you want, and you get your size, but you get another color. Now what happens is if a person is not balanced in their heads, they'll get agitated, They get pissed off that I'm not getting my blue in my color, in my size. So that is what is wrong. So Krishna says that you should learn that, to be balanced in your thought process. Think, pause, and ask yourself, what is my priority? Do I want a shoe? Is that what I want today? Or am I hung up on the color blue? If I want a shoe, then I should go and pick up whatever color is there in my size. But if I'm hung up on blue, then I should place the order for the blue shoe in my size and go back home in peace. Why should I get agitated and pissed off that I'm not getting the shoe in my size? And then till the time the shoe comes, I continue remaining in that pissed off state. See? So that is how I'm also talking in Everyday Gita about how to utilize these things, what we have in our scriptures in our day-to-day life, because they make a lot of sense. And Yashoda that you mentioned, that book resonates with Harshali. She's written about Anartaki. I've written about Yashoda, which is going to come very soon. That is Buddha's wife. And I had the same feeling, I felt that everybody talks about Buddha. What about that woman, he left behind? What happened to her? And there's nothing much. There is very little about Yashoda in history. Very little. And I had to do so much research, to find what I could, write about her. So that was the reason I wrote about Buddha's wife. Because everybody writes about Buddha. Even I've written a book on the footsteps of Buddha, but why not Yashoda? So that's where we take a little bit of creative liberties, we kind of add the emotion to it, we get the material from our research, we plot a timeline, and the creative liberty is the emotion that we add, and plot little irrelevant stuff which is not going to hurt history. So that is the reason for my writing Yashoda also, what she has, and which I think every person who writes historical fiction would have.
So, thank you so much. It's really what ma'am said. I'll just mention that first of all, children, it's very, very important for us, if we want to write something, to be observant. That's what the first point she suggested each and everyone. Unless until we have the finer sensibilities, getting into the things, observing something, we cannot write, we cannot make others also to align themselves with that, which is very, very important. And of course, we talk about life skills in today's life, then how our mythology can give us the lessons of everyday managing our emotions, decision making, time management, so many things in our life we can really learn from these mythology, these legends, and I'm sure I endorse that we all must read the Krishna, the management guru, and Everyday Gita. That's this whole lot. Now we are celebrating our Indianness, our Indian heritage, culture. Why not to learn from these things? I think the world is looking at India and there's so much to learn from Indian mythology and legends. That is there. That's very, very great. Thank you so much, ma'am. So now my next question again to Harshali ma'am. That is there. So besides being an author, you are an accomplished painter, as I said earlier. And how does your artistic expression complement or influence your work as a writer? Your literary career spans diverse genres, from poetry to fiction. And how do you navigate these different forms of expression? And does your approach change depending on the genre? That's what I would like to know.
What can I say? I'm just बहुत अच्छी बात कही थी the earlier panelist. He said very rightly that लिखना या your poetry or writing, any creative pursuit हो जाता है, and that is actually true, because and in that moment you are so overwhelmed with emotion that you only try to look for a creative outlet, and that is what the case is with me. It's just that I've been blessed or lucky that I am able to express myself in several different ways. That's all. I like all of them. Poetry is my first love. Uh, Prose is something that I have found fame, happiness, recognition with. Poetry is very, as I said, it's my first love, so I hide it a lot. I still don't let it out. And painting is something which is very instantaneous. Anything you paint immediately on canvas, there is instant gratification that you see something and you like. In fact, when I wrote my first book, A Window to Her Dreams, I was painting so the cover of the book is my painting, and I was very happy that the publisher said that okay, we'll put that only as the cover. And how it interconnected was that while I was writing the book, I was painting this girl because it's called The Window to Her Dreams. And she's standing at this window. We all have that place in our house, in our homes, which feels like ours. You know, एक कोई ऐसा कोना होता है, कोई कमरा होता है, कोई खिड़की होती है, balcony होती है, where you go to think, to observe, to introspect, to express yourself to yourself. So for that character I had created that she would stand at the window, because while I was young, I was a young girl like you, I would stand at my window and would think and would kind of introspect or process what was happening around me. And so that translated into my book, and simultaneously I was creating this painting, and inevitably this girl Aruna, I call her my tulip, because like a tulip she was very fragile and yet so beautiful. And so it was her fragility that was her beauty, but she needed a lot of support from all the for her external growth. So when I was creating the story, I was also creating the painting, and that just silent, because I think silence will take out the colors from your life as nothing else will. It's okay if you don't have a comment on something that's happening around you. You don't need to have a view on everything that's happening. It's okay to just listen to someone else and let them shine. It's okay to hold yourself back a little. It's okay.
It's really gratifying, and we must nurture and preserve such value, which is very, very important in this era. And now I just ask Prerna Jain ma'am, your books have been translated. You have written in Hindi, isn't it? So your stories were originally written in Hindi and translated by different experts. So then, how do you ensure the essence and nuance of your narratives are preserved in translation? Because that's very, very important.
Like I sometimes quote Gulzar Sahab. He would write something like Gobar ke uple. Now that makes an impact on you, because you kind of picture a village and on the wall there are these cow dung cakes. When you write cow dung cake, it won't make that impact. There is definitely some part lost in it. Like for example, in one of my stories, I had used Iqbal ka ek sher hai. Lazim hai dil ke paas rahe, paas baane ate, lekin use kuch der tanha bhi chhod gaye. When it was translated into English, I didn't like it, and that was omitted. So there is definitely that, but if not for translation, we wouldn't have read all those Russian literature and Bengali and Assamese and all those beautiful stories. So that is the loss we have to take, and we have to decide what language.
Of course, every language has its own nature, and we try to do justice, but there are certain expressions, there are no alternatives possible there. I read your story that usual and yet unusual, and the protagonist resiliently faced various challenges, right? From first, the second, मैंने उसको कूट दिया, the wonderful story I read, and how important it is for you to portray empowerment and resilience in your stories.
See, there are various reasons why women or men for that matter face difficulties. That could be class difference, there could be caste issues, there could be financial issues. But what I realized in my experience was that even like people are talking about mythology, mythological characters, the way they handled it, they may not seem to be empowered, but they really are. They fight back, and they are powerful. Like, I would like to ask a question, which I am not sure that can be answered. Like, we talk about the story of Savitri and Satyavan. And all we were told about as children that Savitri was a pious lady and Sati thi, and that is why. But what we choose to ignore is that Savitri was a very brave woman, a woman like Yamraj ke samne she could stand. People would not even talk about Yamraj, and she stood in front of him, and she defeated Yamraj by her sheer intelligence. How many of us talk about Savitri's intelligence? We talk about Sati Savitri. Even the idiom goes like that. So, same way about characters in the present day environment. You'll see, like the Manikutidiya wali story, that a woman, she was beaten every day by her husband, and one day the husband beats her child, then she beats him back in blue. And but even then, she makes sure कि उसको मरहम लग गया कि नहीं लग गया. She tries to justify, so that character remains. She is a powerful woman who's taking care of her family.
I mean, we all must read those stories. Again, I'm saying just 200 pages and so much is there that will keep you wondering what is there, and you will keep on reflecting also. So thank you so much. Now we can keep the house open for children, and I know that there are so many key children. They are very excited. They want to ask questions of three eminent authors. We have just had conversation. Please do ask. Yeah, raise your hands so that we can take it now. Your questions, please.